When you look at photos taken from spaceships or the International Space Station that show sunlit objects like Earth or the Moon, something seems wrong. Space looks too empty. No magical scenery of a nighttime sky full of stars. It would be incredibly boring to go stargazing in space, since the sky is always dark. During the daytime, the sky on our home planet is blue because of the diffusion of light. It happens when sunlight goes through the atmosphere. But if you were on the moon or somewhere else in space, there would be no atmosphere to spread this light around. That's why the sky there would always appear black. But it doesn't mean less bright out there. If you were looking out the window of the space station, you'd see just as much direct sunlight as you would gazing out of your apartment window during a cloudless day, maybe even more. When taking a picture on a sunny day, you'll probably use a short exposure, together with the narrow aperture setting on your camera. This way, just a short burst of light will get in. That's similar to how our pupils contract in sunlight so that they don't have to deal with too much light. And since it's just as bright up there in space, the process is the same when you take pictures of sunlit objects there. Using short exposure, you can get good, bright pictures of Earth or the surface of the Moon. But it also means there will be no stars in the picture. Even up there, stars are relatively dim. They don't emit enough light to show up in photos taken with such settings. Our home planet has a blue sky that slowly transforms into a beautiful orange-red palette at dusk and dawn. But if you ever get a chance to watch a sunset on Mars, you should expect the opposite, an orange-brown daytime sky that gets a bluish tint at sunset. First of all, Mars is farther away from the Sun than our planet. So, when you're looking at the Sun from the Martian surface, of course, it looks fainter and smaller. And not just that, the Sun observed from Mars is just a bluish-white dot surrounded by a blue halo. The thin atmosphere of the red planet contains large dust particles. They create an effect called scattering. It occurs when the diameter of particles in the atmosphere is almost the same as the wavelength of the scattered light. This effect filters out the red light from the Sun's rays. So, only the blue light would reach your eyes on Mars. How come Earth doesn't have rings? All gas giants in our solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, have such rings, whereas the rocky planets Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars don't. There are two theories about how rings can appear around a planet. They might be just some material left from the times when the planet was forming, or they may be the remains of a moon that got destroyed by a collision with some space body, or torn apart by the strong gravitational pull of its parent planet. The gas giants formed in the outer regions of our solar system, while all the rocky planets are in the inner part. So maybe the inner planets were more protected from potential collisions that could have formed their rings. There are also more moons in the outer regions of our solar system, which could be another reason why the planets there have rings. Also, bigger planets have stronger gravity. It means that they can keep their rings stable after they form. Some experts believe Earth used to have a ring system a long time ago. A Mars-sized object might have collided with our home planet, which probably created a dense ring of debris around it. Some scientists think that this debris formed not a ring, but what we know today as the Moon. There's probably a giant planet lurking at the edge of the solar system, far beyond Neptune. Scientists call this mysterious hypothetical world Planet 9. If it does exist, it's probably similar to Uranus or Neptune and 10 times more massive than our home planet. It's likely to circle around the Sun, but in the outer reaches of the solar system, about 20 times farther than Neptune. Another interesting theory says that Planet 9 could actually be a black hole the size of a grapefruit that warps space in a similar way a large planet would. Even though we once thought it was a rare substance in space, water exists all over our solar system. For example, you can often find it in asteroids and comets. It's also in craters on the Moon and Mercury. We still don't know if there's enough water to support potential human colonies if we decide to move there, but some amount of water is definitely present there. Mars has water at its poles too. It's mostly hidden in the layers of ice and probably under the planet's dusty surface. Europa, Jupiter's moon, has some water too. This is the most likely candidate we know about to host life outside Earth. There's probably a whole ocean of liquid water under its frozen surface. It might actually contain twice as much water as all of Earth's oceans combined. Neptune is unexpectedly warm, even though it's 30 times as far from the sun as our planet and receives less sunlight and heat. But it still radiates way more heat than it gets. It also has way more activity in its atmosphere than you'd suspect, especially if you compare it to its neighbor, Uranus. Both of these planets emit the same amount of heat, even though Uranus is much closer to the sun. No one knows why. Neptune has extremely strong winds that can reach a speed of up to 1,500 miles per hour. Can they produce this heat? Or maybe it's because of the planet's core, or its gravitational force? There's a monster black hole hurtling through space at a speed of 5 million miles per hour. Scientists located it with the Hubble Space Telescope. They believe it weighs as much as 1 billion suns. It was supposed to stay put in the center of its home galaxy, but some gravitational forces are pushing it around. At one point, this black hole is going to break free from its galaxy and continue roaming the universe. Luckily, it's still 8 billion years away from us. Solar storms are so powerful that they could leave us in complete darkness. Back in July 2012, the strongest solar storm in over 150 years narrowly missed Earth. Coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, are large bubbles of ionized gas. They tore through our orbit back then. If they had caught our planet in the crosshairs, we would have literally been in the firing line. We'd have faced solar matter hurtling towards Earth, damaging computers and causing power outages that would have lasted for months. A surprise solar storm hit us on June 25, 2022. One photographer even managed to capture stunning bright auroras that flashed across the dawn sky in Calgary, Canada, and lasted for 5 minutes. They were caused by the storm. Vampire stars are a real thing. They're part of a binary star, and they can literally drain the life out of the other star in the system. They do it to keep burning for a longer time. It works like this. A smaller star with a lower mass steals its sibling's hydrogen fuel to increase its own mass. This vampire star then becomes hotter. Plus, its color changes to striking blue. This way, it looks much younger. How sneaky. The color of the universe is dubbed cosmic latte. The light coming from our galaxies and stars within them, as well as clouds of gas and dust in the observable universe, have a specific color. It's an ivory tint, pretty close to white. The universe is beige because there are a bit more areas that produce green, yellow, and red light than those that emit blue.
Behold the distant future. Yep, humans have successfully colonized Mars and the Moon. Problems with overpopulation and hunger on Earth are solved. But soon, a new threat looms over our planets, and the Moon. Anyway, scientists have figured out that in 150 years, the Sun will explode and destroy our entire solar system. Bummer. There's enough time to build a fleet of huge spaceships and evacuate everyone, but it's not enough time to come up with some sort of sci-fi space jump. It's been a long time since people found a new, potentially livable planet, and the nearest one's a several million years ride away. There's no other choice. Humankind is evacuated into gargantuan spaceships, and the infinitely long voyage begins. A few decades pass. We leave the solar system and watch our sun explode. A huge flash and that's it. There's no more light. Just small, faraway stars and the infinite black depths of space. All ships are on a synced autopilot that won't go off course no matter what. Even if everyone on board were to disappear, the ship would still arrive at its destination. So, the upside, humans will survive for millions more years. The downside? Because of all of that time spent on space transports, will look different, totally different. Ships arriving to the new planet will be populated with shapeless, pulsating biomasses sitting inside metal exoskeletons. Here's how it happens. Bones in space get weaker, so do muscles. There's no gravity, so your body's not under any sort of pressure to keep it running properly. Astronauts on the International Space Station do a lot of exercise to stop their muscles from withering away. Back to the story. There are gyms and special machines that recreate gravity on every space transport. But to save energy, they're only plugged in a couple of hours per day. Unfortunately, no matter how hard people exercise, in space it just won't be enough. After the first 100 years, human bones have become so brittle that anything remotely physical can lead to injury. After another 100 years, people lose the ability to stand up on their two legs, but it's not only because of weak bones. After all those years in zero gravity, the human body's already changed a lot. A big problem is that people lose their sense of balance. If you try to stand up, you'll just fall. The ship's captains dismantled the gravity machines. They weren't working anyways. And all the sports equipment on board got taken apart ages ago and used as spare parts for the ships. The lack of gravity didn't just make people weaker, it also made them taller. The spine needs gravity to keep it stable, and now all those backbone discs have stretched themselves out. Humans are starting to look like blow-up toys. Everyone's given mechanical arms and legs. You just strap them on and get to work. Servicing the engine, cleaning out the bedrooms, throwing trash out into space, lifting anything. Not happening without those mechanical arms and legs. Time passes, and people become more helpless. Luckily, the mechanical bodysuits keep getting better and better. Since the sun collapsed in on itself, human eyes have been having a hard time. Inside the ships, the sun is replaced by special artificial light that also gives off vitamin D. Since there's way less light overall, people's pupils become whiter. Then, after a few more centuries, their vision really starts going downhill. But this problem is solved by technology. Artificial lenses magnify light and keep humans from going completely blind. The ships get disinfected every single day. That stops bacteria and microbes from multiplying. But it also means that the human immune system doesn't have to fight off any diseases. Pretty soon, humans can't defend themselves against anything. Even a mild cold could be seriously harmful. It's fine for now. There are no germs or anything on board. But what's going to happen later on down the road? On the ship, millions of plants grow in special greenhouses with water and ultraviolet light. The plants produce oxygen and spread it through the entire ship. Of course, it's not enough oxygen to satisfy millions, but it helps people remember the planet they left behind. After centuries of living on spaceships, humans have adapted to the new conditions and almost stopped breathing. Lungs have disappeared almost completely, and humans are starting to develop other ways of getting oxygen. From water, from liquid oxygen tanks, we're becoming a totally new species. But it's not all bad. Genetic engineering is developing every year. Full-fledged life support suits are created. They help with movement, strength, speed, vision, hearing, even speech. People's voices get so weak they can only speak in whispers. Luckily, the suits have built-in microphones and speakers. There's no food anymore, just specially created liquids. After all that time in space, the human stomach can't digest anything anyway. Fancy a handful of peanuts or a small cracker? Forget it! In the beginning, the special space food had loads of flavor. But over time, people sort of forgot what things were supposed to taste like. Eventually, they stopped adding in flavorings, and because of this new tasteless food, tongue receptors stopped working. Soon, people lost all sense of taste. For some people, this life seems unbearable, but they have a choice. They can just slide on into a cryogenic capsule for millions of years. Then it's just a matter of a quick defrost when the ships finally arrive. But it's seriously risky to be frozen for such a long time. There's no guarantee that the ships won't crash into a huge meteorite, or worse. People start to take a different approach. They upload their consciousness to a central computer. It's safer and requires much less power. And when you wake up, you can just download your mind into a new, modified human suit. Some people decide to stay awake and live a, quote, normal life. Thousands of years pass, then millions. Humans look really different now. All their limbs are now artificial, and the exoskeletons they wear are controlled by mind power. With each passing millennium, arms, neck, legs, and spines, they become smaller and smaller. Brittle bones soon dissolve into nothingness. Eyes, nose, and mouths disappear. The brain isn't protected by a skull anymore, it's just surrounded by soft skin. Only consciousness remains. Nowadays, a human is a powerful high-tech robot ruled over by a small pulsating bag filled with a brain. It's been a few million years since humans left Earth. All the ship's inhabitants have already forgotten that their species was born on a planet with gravity. The history of life on Earth has become a myth, an ancient legend. Most people believe that these ships are their true homes, always have been. That's why, when humans finally reach their destination, no one's that eager to get off and have a walk around. Life on a new, unknown planet seems like a huge pain in the spacesuit. Gravity, air, bacteria, germs – it takes several thousand years of evolution for humanity to get used to these new conditions. Luckily, humans have a secret weapon – technology. At this point, all humans are downloaded from the central computer into new robot suits. People face a choice: get off the ship and make this planet their new home, or stay and live on the ships. Those that stay on the ships set off into the expanses of space to explore the galaxy and discover new worlds. Those who decide to stay on the new planet have to adapt to the new conditions. It's pretty different from Earth. There's a different air density, different weather patterns, and strange new chemical elements. It will take another million years before these robo-brain sacks take on a new shape. One day, these distant human descendants will want to research their origins. They'll invent a ship that can jump through space and time. The research will lead them to the distant past, to the small planet Earth, to now. This might sound crazy, but just imagine that tomorrow someone lands in your backyard and they're your descendants from the future. Those passengers who stayed on the ships will probably find new planets and maybe decide to stay on some of them. Their bodies will change and adapt too. So, in billions of years, the universe will be inhabited by different amazing creatures that all have something in common. They were all humans once.
Many people would like to fly into space. Zero gravity, a stunning view of Earth from one side, and the boundlessly frightening black area from the other. Yeah, it's all cool. But don't forget that this journey can turn into a nightmare. Lack of oxygen, floating in outer space and staying in a spaceship for a long time without understanding when you can return home. This last thing happened to a Russian cosmonaut. His stay in space is one of the longest in the world. 33-year-old flight engineer Sergei Krikalev spent 311 days in zero gravity on the Mir space station. But that's not the most interesting part of this story. Sergei's long journey began on May 18, 1991. That day, he boarded a transport ship and went into space to the Mir space station. On May 20th, the docking with the station was completed. There, together with another engineer, Sergei performed his space duties. They went on spacewalks several times, did repairs, took care of the station, and conducted scientific experiments. When you have company and a lot of work, living in space is not so hard. But things got worse on the day when Sergei was supposed to return home. According to the plan, the mission should have lasted for 5 months. A new astronaut was supposed to replace the old ones. The transport ship had finally docked with the station. But on October 10th, only one astronaut returned to Earth. Sergei was left alone at the Mir station. He continued to work as the sole flight engineer of the crew. The station couldn't remain empty. They had to send someone to replace Sergei. He wasn't ready for such a long stay in space. He hadn't trained for it. But there was no choice. He couldn't just leave the station. 1 month passed. They informed Sergei that he would return home soon, but something happened that no one expected. They contacted Sergei and said he couldn't return, since the country that promised to bring him home no longer existed. During this time, a big crisis began in Russia. The cosmonaut's return was impossible, since no one had the money for it. Just imagine Sergei's condition. You are hundreds of miles from home in black outer space, completely alone, and have no idea how many days you have left to be there. The days passed slowly, weeks, then a month passed. It would have been much easier if being in space was not harmful to your health. But in conditions of zero gravity, the human body takes serious damage. First, it's a weakening of the muscles. The body doesn't receive the necessary load it needs, and the muscles are constantly in a relaxed state, leading to dystrophy. Yes, astronauts do a set of exercises every day, but this is not enough to keep the body in shape. In addition to muscles, bones begin to weaken and a person becomes weak. Even after 6 months of such a life, any astronaut needs a long time to get back into their previous shape after returning home. Also, there's a lot of radiation in space, which is dangerous for people. It comes from several sources at once. The main radiation comes from the sun. On Earth, we're protected from it, thanks to the planet's magnetic field. Almost all radiation accumulates in the upper atmosphere and doesn't reach us. This accumulation of radiation in the atmosphere is also bad for astronauts. But the worst radiation is the galactic one. It comes from distant stars and galaxies and has a powerful effect on all living things. Radiation provokes many unfavorable conditions and destroys the body at the cellular level. Now, all spaceships and the ISS are equipped with shields and coatings that reflect radiation. But still, it doesn't provide 100% protection. In space, the astronaut's immune system changes. There are no conditions under which immunity could improve. It seems that there's nothing wrong with the absence of many bacteria and microbes, but the body's defense is weakening. A person becomes more vulnerable to microbes that can be brought by another astronaut. You also have serious food restrictions. Food in tubes doesn't contain as many useful vitamins as it does in natural products. Without vitamins, the body weakens even more. And sometimes, astronauts have to go on spacewalks, which aren't easy. A spacesuit is a huge and uncomfortable outfit. It constrains your movements and puts pressure on your body. Work in space can last up to several hours. During this time, you sweat a lot. One of the suit's filters may be broken, and all the fluid released by your body can spread throughout the suit and reach your face. Your eyes may water. The drops could interfere with your vision. Thousands of dangers can await an astronaut during a mission in outer space. Imagine that you do some repairs and something goes wrong. The wrench jumps off the bolt and it flies out, for example. You try to catch it and unconsciously push off from the ship. You catch the bolt, but your body is already flying away. You have nothing to hold on to. But fortunately, you have a safety rope. Anyway, it can break off from your spacesuit because you attached it incorrectly. As soon as the rope breaks, your body changes the angle of flight. Now you're not just flying away, your body is spinning at this moment. The Earth and black space flash in your eyes. So you get it. There are definitely risks, but nothing like that happened with Sergei. All astronauts spend many hours training to be ready for any troubles. They gain good physical shape and lose it during the mission. Add to this the psychological factor. Your body weakens, you don't breathe fresh air, you can't see your friends, and you don't have the opportunity to return home. A small layer of wall separates you from the cold vacuum of space. All this causes stress, which also weakens your immunity and harms your nervous system. Fortunately, astronauts also get through serious psychological training. They can maintain self-control in the most stressful situations. But when you're alone in space for more than 6 months and don't know when you'll return, you can get seriously nervous. Fortunately, Sergei didn't panic. He performed his daily duties, trained, and of course, missed home. A month later, he received the same response. "We can't bring you back yet. The country is in a difficult situation." He felt worse every day. His strength was leaving him. He wasn't sure if he'd be able to survive. The most interesting thing is the station had a capsule developed to return to Earth. But Sergei didn't use it because no one would have served the station. Russia sold the station seats to other countries. Also, they hoped to sell Mir. This meant that Sergei had to keep the station working. Sergei's mission lasted twice as long as planned. As a result, he spent 10 months, or 311 days, in space and set a world record. During this time, he flew around the Earth about 5,000 times. Finally, he received the long-awaited message. He's coming home. Germany paid about $24 million for a ticket to the station. They were going to replace the astronaut. Krikalev got into the capsule and flew to Earth. Many people were waiting for his return down there. The cosmonaut landed, and everyone rushed to help him. He looked very thin, sweaty, and exhausted. 4 men helped him out of the capsule. They helped him stay on the ground, gave him a fur coat, and brought a bowl of broth. It seemed that such a flight would leave an imprint on his life forever. But the cosmonaut's mood was excellent. 2 years later, he went into space again and became the first Russian cosmonaut to fly on a NASA shuttle. And 2 years later, he was one of the first to live on the ISS. In 2005, he made his 6th and last flight. He went to the ISS, where he spent about 6 months, after which he returned home on the lander. After this flight, he set a world record for the total duration of stay in space at 803 days. Only 10 years later, someone managed to break that record, but that's a different story.